Doesn't matter. Whatever everybody has in here, I have too. So too late for that.
Okay, it's 12 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. We're missing LCO, and that's going to be the big part of what we got going on. All right. Madam Clerk, are we in certification for compliance with open meetings laws?
Yes, we are.
Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Is there anybody here who wishes to address the committee that is not on the agenda? This is under public comments or item number 4. Hearing none, moving on. We're going to go to minutes from the previous meeting. Has the committee had a chance to review the minutes from the August meeting?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Mr. Hoff.
Second.
A second from Mr. Yackel. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote on the motion. Indicate by saying aye.
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, now we have the Justice Point update. Mr. Sainer, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
You have the floor, sir.
Excellent. And I'd actually pass the floor probably back on to Tom, as I don't know necessarily the process to proceed at the CJCC meeting. Tom, go ahead. I don't know if you have to add to what's been presented.
All right, so your document is on the screen.
Gotcha.
So how do you want to do this? Do you want to just speak to it, or you want to answer questions, or how do you want to handle this?
I don't know if everyone, Tom, I don't know if you have any questions or any suggestions on how to proceed.
I only got 2 questions, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Joe Maury's here. All right, so I don't know what the structure is. Tom, you?
Yeah, I can give a brief introduction, review of where we're at here. Since we met the last time, we've now appointed 2 citizens onto this committee. Kathy McCoy is one, and I don't see the other rep here today, but welcome. We're at the point, kind of a critical juncture here for this committee, in that we've previously lost 2 employees that were crucial to what we've been doing here, and we've decided, this committee has decided to temporarily replace those employees with some help with Justice Point. So Justice Point is the firm out of the Milwaukee area who is into evidence-based processes and exactly the type of thing that we're looking for. So what the document is in front of you and on the screen is a first attempt here at trying to articulate what it is that Justice Point is going to do for Sawyer County. The original plan is for Justice Point to hire 2 employees using the funding that we previously had for Diane's position and Mr. Welch's position in the jail to fund this project with Justice Point. So the salaries that we had allocated there, plus the funds that we had allocated for drug testing and other supplies, creates the budget of about $200,000 that we've been spending on those activities to allow Justice Point to help us continue those activities and improve on them and get us in a direction where we're in a better position to get some grant funding and some of the diversion programs and other processes, drug court, and those things that are needed as we move forward, looking forward to the second court and to the programs that we have been talking about establishing. So with that kind of review, I'll turn it back to Nick, who is from Justice Point. He's our lead contact at Justice Point. And again, it's up to this committee then to kind of take the bull by the horns and pick up where we left off with where we were going and improve upon these activities that will help us with recidivism and the jail population and the addiction problems that we have in this county and some of those other things that we're trying to deal with. So Nick, other comments, and then we can open up to the floor to see what kind of questions we have.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom, and I appreciate it. And the only thing I would highlight from Tom's comment, or make sure that I reemphasize this, is that this is our first attempt. Diane gave us some information. We got some information about what Dick Welch was doing as well. We tried to take a look at the activities that we felt comfortable taking over. Obviously, Dick Welch was involved in running jail activities as well, and we're not sworn law enforcement officers, and we're not interested in necessarily providing jail security and whatnot. We're not qualified to do that. So we had to try to take what Diane gave us and what we were given from Dick Welch's job description and try to combine them together to make this document. Again, it is definitely our first attempt. We're open to getting feedback. The thing that I struggle with, and I will just be completely transparent, is trying to negotiate and organize and structure this with a committee is difficult a little bit on our end. But I want to hear as much feedback as possible so that hopefully I can make edits, get this document back to Tom as quickly as possible for approval so that we can start moving in a more formal process.
So this document, this is Tom again, this document would be part of a formal contract, and there is another document that lays out some of the specific contract legal jargon that goes along with this. But a couple of steps in order to get there. One is, of course, the funding put in place by Sawyer County and the contributions from LCO, which requires an additional MOU. The current one expires in January of 2021. So we're looking to renew that MOU between those two entities to help unify our efforts here and provide the funding for this activity in the future. So we're trying to define what that activity is going to be with this document in front of you.
All right, so a couple things. One, Mr. Sainer, you're saying that you're having difficulty coordinating with this committee. I want to make sure that we're clear that this committee doesn't really have any authority. What we have is representatives from the various aspects of the justice system, and they're here to provide insight. This committee does not have the ability to bind or provide direction to those individual agencies or actors. And so when Diane was providing information, she was providing us an update to making sure all the parties were involved with what the process was in terms of the criminal justice system. The tribe is here to, I'm assuming, increase their involvement with that. There's some other discussion points that I know that Judge Smith wanted to have brought up, and so we have Judge Trepanier here, who's I'm assuming in her place. So I don't know exactly what you expect from this committee. There is some guidance that we could provide in terms of goals that we hope to achieve, and that'll be done through a conversation. We're not we're not in a capacity, nor do we have the authority to provide the direct guidance that would be the purpose for negotiating a contract.
Yes, thank you for the clarification, Mr. Chair. I wasn't trying to say that this committee was going to be negotiating with us. It's just I want to make sure that trying to draft any document through committee is sometimes difficult for the person who's writing it. That's all I was indicating. And I want to make sure that I'm taking into consideration everyone's perspective and certainly acknowledging their role within the criminal justice system as a whole, and ultimately make sure that we have a document that works for as many people as possible.
Right. And the second thing I want to make sure is that we separate the discussion with Justice Point and the MOU, because those are two separate points, and they have different legal basis in terms of what the discussion point is going to be. So if we can keep the Justice Point discussion to the document that's in front of us, and then if there's any information, Mr. Hoskins, collect that, and then we'll kind of sort through that as we go forward. My first question for you, Mr. Sainer, since I don't want to relinquish the floor, is on Article 2, Section 1, Paragraph B, Sub 2. Program census shall not exceed 50 defendants with approval of the Sawyer County Administrator and Justice Point. Are we limiting 50 participants, or what are we doing, and how is the administrator going to have the legal authority to act on behalf of the defendants?
Great question. I think what we're looking at trying to do is set a realistic expectation for a capacity to provide quality services to Sawyer County. Again, as in any contracted situation, we have to figure out a structure that works so that we're providing quality services to the county and providing quality supervision for the courts. We don't want to be in a position where that number can just continue to escalate, because then we're not going to actually be able to provide quality services and quality supervision to the county and the courts, and provide supervision reports, drug testing, et cetera, et cetera. So this is my best, again, this is the best guess, not knowing, again, the structure.
All right, so Mr. Sainer, I have to interrupt you for a little bit. Here's my concern with this one, is that we have Justice Point acting in the criminal justice system, and if a defendant is under the supervision of the court, there's a DA that's going to be involved, there's going to be an attorney that's involved, and so I would want to make sure that the county administrator does not inherit some kind of extrajudicial opportunity, and making sure that everyone has the opportunity to either be part of this program, to not be part of this program. But I'm nervous about that. I'm nervous about a cap of 50, and I'm nervous about the Sawyer County administrator having some kind of decision-making authority in determining who's going to receive services under this program. You can unmute.
I can understand that. I guess I would ask, as a service provider, where is an appropriate limit at some point? Whether it's the county administrator, whether it's some other actor that's involved in the CJCC, I need some guidance as to, and some support as to saying we have to have a limit of the number of people that we're supervising and providing quality services.
I don't know what that limit's going to look like. I don't know what your numbers are based on. We don't have that in here. I don't have that number with me, but if that's, how many people do we have in the justice system? More than 50?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think?
There's more than 50 cases pending. I mean, there's.
So
I think I'd be done with 50 cases. All right.
So let me, Mr. Sainer, we should probably revisit that. And I don't have a problem with Mr. Off being a point of contact, but I'm nervous about him having some type of non-recognized role in terms of the justice system component. I mean, I'm okay with him being the contracted party because he's the point of disbursement for the funds, but for the decision on who's going to receive services, that needs to be better fleshed out.
Well, I guess I would add some clarification to this, and maybe this is how it works in other jurisdictions that I've worked with. This is pretrial services and supervision is no different than any other limited service and limited asset and limited resource. The jail has only so many jail beds. Pretrial service at some point has to have some limit on the number of people that can be ordered to supervision. That doesn't mean people shouldn't be released out into the community. It just means that the people that are placed on supervision should be reserved to those that actually need that level of supervision. Whether that number is 50, 75, 60, whatever it is, at some point, me as a vendor has to say, this is what your limit is. I can't just leave the doors open indefinitely for 2 positions. It's not going to be maintainable on my end. It's not going to be appropriate for me as a nonprofit organization to take on responsibilities or potentially liability to provide frankly, a lack of quality supervision services. I just can't do that. So again, who that is in Sawyer County, it doesn't matter to me, but at some point there needs to be a limit.
Well, Mr. Sander, we're definitely going to bring you up so we can have this conversation. I don't know if it's going to be as effective over Zoom as we'd like to hope. So hopefully you can schedule some time in the next probably 30 days so that we can have this meeting, put myself in the room with you, Mr. Hoff, and then see where this discussion goes, probably Mr. Schumer as well. And then we'll do something where we can have a conversation with the DA and the judge and someone from Reed's office, I'm just nervous about this because we had this covered before, and now we're not able to cover what we've been providing before. And this is gonna have a detrimental impact. So let's just make sure that we step cautiously. There's 2 points to that. One is the cap, and the other one is the point of contact. Point of contact we can take care of. So we're gonna table that discussion and move on to the next one. Does anybody else have a question regarding the document that's in front of you?
She's getting the other document, the other piece of it that I didn't hand out. But it's on the board there.
Sure.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Nick. This is Tweed. Appreciate you presenting this to us. I guess my questions, Nick, are mainly focused on the tribe and the tribal members. And Nick, where in here are you going to be assisting the tribe and our members? And I see you have some randomized drug testing schedule, and then under diversion programming. Could you add some language there where the tribe is going to be involved? We have right now, or prior to this pandemic, we had done drug testing out at our mental health, behavioral health facility. And are we going to continue that if it were to be randomized? And then the diversion programming at the tribal office and at our tribal court. We have a healing to wellness court. And we have all other diversion programs set up. And could you include those in some of this language?
Sure. Again, I had to go off of the information that I had with Diane and with Dick Welch. So I was trying to take that information and combine it into one responsibility document. Tweed, I think it's incumbent upon whoever is filling these roles to partner obviously with the tribe and hopefully try to realize some efficiencies of scale. My hope and my assumption would be individuals who are ordered to pretrial supervision, if they're subject to random drug testing, that randomized drug testing schedule be coordinated and facilitated through one protocol. Although the location and where it would take place, again, from my perspective, as long as it's consistent protocol and practice, would be completely fine occurring at either location. I think the other piece that we've talked about, and again in this responsibility document, we're really focusing on the nuts and bolts of the activities, the ability and the need to coordinate efforts and partner with the tribe didn't really fit in, from my perspective, in the nuts and bolts of it, but it's certainly in the execution of the nuts and bolts is something that's very important for me if we pursue and continue on with these contracts.
Nick, we're going to have to, to me, the travel component's a really complicated component.
Absolutely.
Also probably the most crucial. So I think we really need to, do you have the ability to come up?
Yes.
I think
Absolutely.
that we need to set up and have that meeting so that we can get as many people in the room as feasible.
I would welcome that.
This discussion, because if you're basing your information on Diane and Deputy Welch's information, you're already limited because they would have had almost little. The only really contact we would have had is if they would have been a declared tribal member, because there was a mechanism where Diane was working with the tribe's component in terms of the testing. So you're already coming in with one hand tied behind your back. We want to make sure that there's, we have to make sure that the testing is accessible, because transportation is an issue for tribal members on reservation for testing, as well as the availability of the testing themselves and running it through the GP. So that's going to require a lot of maneuvering and a lot of different documents and a lot of different discussions. So, Mr. Schuman, I didn't mean to cut you off. Is that sufficient for your question?
Appreciate your input.
Mr. Chair, I completely agree and would be more than open and more than willing to have those detailed conversations. That would very much help us in sort of ironing out the rough edges in this document.
Yeah.
I guess the one point that I want to look out and review, or have you consider in looking at this document is under the section B that we're looking at. And under the old system here with the testing, the court had developed a system not so much to the point where we were just testing for the sake of testing. we were A, testing to make sure that somebody was following the conditions of their bond, and B, getting them into some type of treatment, whether if they were a tribal member, then getting them into outpatient treatment through LCO-CCS, or if they were non-tribal through Sawyer County CCS, or wherever they could get in at some private entity. And the idea would be that they would be getting some type of outpatient treatment. Under this pretrial supervision, it looks to me, I'm reading through it here. You obviously, we've already talked about the limitation of the number of people that are going to be with the limitations, and I do understand that from your viewpoint that there's got to be some limitation, and 50 is a good place to start. I think at some point we may have had 80 or 90 on some kind of type of bond. So I mean, 50 is a big chunk. But what I'm concerned about is here is that we talk about, you know, Justice Point requiring weekly or monthly contact based on pretrial risk level. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. The modifications to the structure, I'm a little confused at, because at the beginning it says it's the program of pretrial supervision as ordered by a judicial officer. So the judicial officer has the order, but then any modification that must be approved by the Sawyer County Administrator and Justice Point. Well, I think the court, whether it's a court commissioner or a circuit judge, not just me, could be an out-of-county judge, they are the ones that have the authority as to what it looks like. Now, I agree that, and we talked, Nick, about whatever the suggestions are by Justice Point, there would be certainly a cooperative, you know, the judge, me in this case, me, would be certainly going through this and ordering what is in what you're capable of doing. But I look at this and then it says Justice Point will provide reports on defendant status and compliance. I'm just a little concerned that we're missing the most important part of this. Where in this pretrial supervision is there anything that talks about outpatient treatment? Because we're talking about diversion programs in section 2, and that's all well and good for diversion programs, but I mean, when we're talking about meth and heroin use, we're not talking about diversion programs, we're talking about getting them treatment. And then once those, you know, if they're doing well on treatment, they're doing well, you know, and staying clean and getting their lives back on track, then we go about having it reflecting in any potential outcome of the case. So I'm just worried that one whole section is not really talking about what Justice Point would be doing other than testing and seeing if they're compliant with the conditions of the bond. I was hoping that they would be, you know, as we had it set up before, it was if they choose to just stay under the conditions of the testing, that would be up to them under the old system. Because the idea being, well, if you are a drug and meth addict and you don't think you need help and you're going to keep testing, well, you're going to be testing positive, and then you don't want a cash bond, you don't want to be sitting in custody, you want to open yourself up to treatment. And so that was why we had that condition in there with Ms. McNamer saying as long as they were engaged in their AODA treatment or outpatient treatment, she wouldn't be referring them back to the court for any modifications of the bond. So I guess my question is here, is it just, it seems to be silent as in that section as far as the treatment component of that, and that's what I'm concerned about. And maybe it's complicated enough that I'm just overlooking a certain section of it, but that's what I guess my input is at this point.
Can I respond?
Yep, I'm done.
Yeah, oh, excellent. Judge Yackel, I completely agree. I completely understand your concern. This is the difference between, and this is the fine line I'm trying to play, trying to use language to define the activities from a contractual basis, but then understanding the day-to-day protocol and practices will add flesh to the bones that are in this contract. So
understood. I think as long as you understand that, I think we'll be able to find a way to put some flesh on the bone. But as long as you understand, that makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah. What I always tell people is that, part of pretrial supervision, we train our staff not to be deaf, dumb, and blind to social service needs of the clients that we serve. So we really focus on trying to be a broker of services, connecting people to community-based services so that if they have substance abuse issues, mental health issues, that we're making that connection, making that referral, making that warm handoff to whether it be tribal services or community-based services in the county. And then part of those status reports will include updates on how people are doing in the community.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
All right, so what we need to do is, and Nick, you're running at a kind of a disadvantage because Diane probably, or you did not have something fleshed out in terms of the services that the tribe has to offer in terms of its behavioral health and CCS. And so incorporating that into this discussion is going to be crucial. And I think that can be folded into the next point. So do we have any other questions for Mr. Stainer from anybody else on the committee? Mr. Paquette, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Mr. Howie?
Nothing.
Lieutenant? Sheriff? Ms. McCoy?
I just have a question. It's under section 3.
You're gonna have to speak up. With the
Section
microphone.
3, these jail programs, and it kind of goes back to what the judge was talking about in terms of how are we going to coordinate these things together. It says Justice Point will seek, oversee, and develop inmate programs within the Sawyer County Jail. What do they have in mind, and how is that going to coordinate with things that we already have in existence? I mean, we do have some very limited mental health counseling, that type of thing, that we are contracting for. How is this going to wrap around with CCS, both the county and the tribal CCS programs and other programs, or is there going to be an initiative to develop some more programming and provide more services within the jail itself?
Okay, so I think I heard the gist of it. It was a little bit of soft, obviously remotely, but my goal is certainly to partner with the Sheriff's Department and other community-based providers to ensure that we can increase programming within the Sawyer County Jail. I'm not here to remove programs that are doing well. We want to partner with the existing resources and partner with the stakeholders that are involved in providing those services so that we can improve service in Sawyer County, not interfere with any sort of structures or programs that are currently operating. We are familiar, my organization is very familiar with CCS programs in multiple other counties and jurisdictions. We understand what goes along with that. We want to certainly make sure that clients who are incarcerated have access to those community-based services when they're released. So we'd be open to any partnership and any coordination, and certainly would look to improve programming and enhance programming.
Can I just follow up? So
Sure.
what kind of programs are you looking at beyond what we already have to develop in the jail?
That's where I would, again, I've made mention of this before, in a couple other meetings. I would want it to coordinate a group of stakeholders to start talking, having those conversations before I made any moves or our staff made any moves of adding additional programming. So I would want to do sort of what's called a gap analysis in the programs. Again, we wouldn't have to do a formal analysis. It could be very, very brief and informal, but to take a look at the current existing programs and then also identify any needs that we feel like are missing in the current program array. So do I have a list of programs off the top of my head? No, I don't. I would work with the Sawyer County Jail and the Sheriff's Department to find out what the needs are of the community members.
We have a list of programs that are being offered right now. Or that
I don't have it on me, but I do have a list. I felt the D2 kind of summarized any concerns as far as what programs would be if they're willing to work with us.
Yeah.
We're comfortable with that.
I'm just worried at how much time this is a contract, okay? So how much time are they willing to devote to, I think we give you extra 10 hours a week, 5 hours, to devote to enhancing the programs or providing new programs, within the scope of the overall contract.
Well, I know Mr. Hoff made that a point of note for Mr. Sander when he comes up to visit, so that will definitely be part of the discussion. So,
I mentioned time. Do you have any sort of a timeline when this is going to kick off? Because I'm sure the judge is concerned about.
we're behind the ball on this. So time is of the essence. Probably the answer that you're looking for.
I'm sorry?
Time is of the essence. We're trying to get this done as soon as we can.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Hoff.
Could you describe the mental health contract that you have that has been increased within the your proposed budget? Because that kind of fits into it as well.
Currently, Nick, we have, we're contracted through Advanced Correctional Healthcare on that part of that contract. And this was back when our average daily population was in the 50s, but part of that contract is 4 hours of mental health, on-site mental health per week. And in my proposed budget increase, that would bump that contract up to 8 hours a week. Still not enough, but financially, that's the best we can do at this point. That's on-site within the jail.
Sure, that's great. One of the first immediate connections that I could see we could potentially aid in is because if we are interviewing everyone that's coming into the jail, maybe we could again operate as that sort of early identification process so that those 8 hours that you have is you're getting an efficiency of scale. If we're doing the K-10 mental health screen, we can identify people that are coming into the system that are in need of further mental health screening. That would be one of the easiest ways to sort of increase the effectiveness of a program like that.
Okay. All right. Mr. Reed, do you have any questions for Mr. Sainer?
I do not.
Mr. Schley, do you have any questions for Mr. Sainer? Jeff, can you hear us?
Yeah, now I can. I do not.
Okay. All right. I have one last question. Hopefully it's not too much. Nick, you made a reference about community service. Is that something that you're going to try to establish here at Sawyer County?
There was mention in Diane's description that there was a community service component already in existence. So if that is not the case, then that would be something that we would establish and help develop.
Okay, we have community service.
It was through Diane McNamer when she left, it basically left. So somebody would have to reestablish it, but if there was a model here for it.
Okay. All right. Well,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
He's right, though.
everybody likes to hear that. All right. So Nick, that's definitely something that we're going to want to have part of the discussion. Is going to be how the community service department is going to be fleshed out. So
Absolutely.
is there any comments or questions for Mr. Sainer as we close out item number 6? Mr. Hoff.
Yeah, just a final comment. Appreciate the discussion, and I think if we've got other concerns or questions, we can work through that. You know, as Kathy mentioned, this is part of the contractual obligation, and it's my job to make sure that what we're going to pay the money for, we kind of define as carefully as we can what that is. Now, this is going to be a moving target because what we've done in the past may not be what we do in the future, but it's a starting point on what we're going to get for services at this point. And there are some things in here that, you know, say the county administrator, you know, has decision capability, you know, but that's not my realm. You know, my realm is to work through and make sure that we get the services that we think we're going to get. The justice part of it, not my wheelhouse. So
we just got to make sure the contract reflects that. We don't want it to be imposed because the other powers are not going to surrender that. They're not going to say, well, this contract says that the judge is going to push the DA or whatever. So we just got to make sure that that's a realistic enforceable provision of the contract. So here's what we're going to wrap this up this way. Nick, can you coordinate with Mr. Hoff about a date and time that you can be back up here in Sawyer County?
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask Mr. Schuman to be made available, myself to be made available with Mr. Hoff, and then when we have that meeting time, we'll let other committee members be aware that if they want to be present for that conversation, they can be present. Otherwise, I'm just going to require that it be Mr. Schuman, myself, Mr. Hoff, and yourself to work on this. Mr. Howie, he's also county board member, so I can't tell him, but he'll be there if the schedule allows. And the other committee members can be present and be part of that discussion as well. So I'm saying that it's required for Tweed and I. It's optional for everyone else. Everyone else is invited to attend, and we'll work on that when you get here to find out what exactly that's going to look like. Mr. Hoff.
yeah, one other question. Part of the idea of getting this ironed out is to give Nick an idea of what kind of job descriptions he has for his personnel. So I asked Nick, what further discussion do you need in order to be comfortable with the type of person and the qualifications needed to perform the activities in here, and what's your time frame on getting employees hired for that?
Sure. So what I'm going to do is, from what I've heard, the feedback that I've gotten from the committee members and Mr. Chair, I can certainly take and create a job description off of the information that I have right now. I don't expect there to be massive changes, maybe very important and very significant changes to this description, but not from an eligibility or qualification standpoint. So my hope is to get the job descriptions ironed out probably by the end of the week or early next week at the latest, and then get something posted shortly thereafter. The nice thing about the pandemic is we've gotten fairly good at doing remote, at least interviews, so we can at least start the interviewing process beforehand. Obviously, we wouldn't make any offers or final offers to fill those positions until a contract is finalized, or any offers would be contingent upon having the contract finalized.
Right. Well, the one component that's going to be is going to be the next part of this agenda. So, is there any more discussion from Mr. Sander? Mr. Sander needs to stay in the line because you're going to want to probably hear what the next point of number 7 is going to be. Mr. Schumann.
When do we plan on getting this contract from?
As soon as it's done.
I mean,
Time is of the essence, but we need to hammer out the points because I shared the judge's concerns in terms of what the administrative role is going to be under the pretrial and the judicial components of this. We also have a community service component. I want to make sure that the DA feel comfortable with that. We need Mr. Reed. We need Reed's involvement in terms of, in his component in terms of what the deferred prosecution component is going to be. So we're close, but we're not done yet. But we're a lot closer than we were before this meeting started. So,
yeah, because I think tribal governing board and our legal team and maybe our courts, Mr. Companion or judge will want to get this. They might want a little input.
you're gonna really like number 7. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Sainer? All right, moving on to number 7, memorandum of understanding between the Recruiter Tribal Governing Board and the county. So in the past, what we've done is there was an MOU, a memorandum of understanding that was established between this committee on behalf of the county through this committee with the tribe to help offset the cost for the budgeting for the CJCC. The scope and the application of CDC has since grown leaps and bounds. I can't even think of the word that would be. It is expanded beyond normal description. And so we're at the point where the MOU now is expiring in January, and the MOU stipulated 1, participation from the Tribal Governing Board, putting 2 people on. It also indicated a cooperation between the counterparts in the justice system, meaning the courts, law enforcement, probation and corrections, if there was a counterpoint that could be established, and then other community health services to include behavioral health and whatever else. And so now we're at the end of that MOU, and we have three major issues. One, we've got a funding question. It's always a funding question. Second one is we've got a jurisdictional question. And 3, we've got a services question. And so what I'm going to ask for Mr. Schumann in his capacity as both and I was going to ask for Ms. Cjcc, is if there could be an invitation sent to the Tribal Governing Board or to the liaisons to have a meeting so that we can discuss what that's going to look like. The simple thing is that we need money to help pay for this, and we're looking at a budget of about $200,000 that's going to pay for Nick Sainer to provide the services. The second part is we got to make sure that there's a travel component in place here because the jail population is predominantly Native American, and for whatever the ideological, political, sociological reasons, we still have a population that needs services, and a lot of them are on the reservation. And the third component is we still have a difficulty for access to services, and if we can coordinate the justice system to be matching up with the CCS programs that we have in place in both the county and the tribe. We've had a working model that worked under Diane, and when we had Candy Berger. And so when we had those 2 components, we had a lot of tribal members and a lot of other citizens of Surrey County that were on release from jail that were under some kind of bond conditions, and then we had some kind of cooperation, and it was kind of like a quasi drug court pre-sentencing, and it was effective for what we were trying to do. It was areas of improvement, but it was better than whatever we had done before. And so we need to bring that back. We need to resurrect that. And I think Nick is kind of caught short-handed because he only got that one side of that conversation, and he needs to be here for that tribal side of that conversation. And we need to get the tribal authorities in there so that there's clearly delineated a lot of the different responsibilities so that it doesn't all fall on the county. So I say that knowing that we're gonna have to, anytime you open up an MOU between two sovereign bodies, there's gonna be some discussion. So Mr. Schuman, I'm gonna give you the floor if you wanna speak to that issue. Otherwise, what we need to do is, like I set a meeting up so that we can put up parameters for this MOU, find out what the dollar amount's gonna be, what the tribe's comfortable with contributing, because the county's gonna pick it up. Unfortunately, there's not money there to do that, so it's coming at the expense of something else. So if there's other funds that we brought in to alleviate that, then we can work on it. But the other part of that is if the tribe can contribute, the tribe has a better position to participate in providing services to tribal members. And there could be like in-kind contributions, because then the testing could be under IHS. I don't know what, those are just free-flowing thoughts. So Mr. Schuman, Mr. Trepanier, if you have anything you wish to say on that, you're queued up. Any other board members that wish, or committee members that wish to speak to that? I'm going to go in order of Mr. Schuman, Mr. Trepanier, and then we'll go from there.
Well, the tribe wants to contribute. We feel this first MOU was a great success. I mean, to do the testing that we did out of Cjcc in here, there's a lot of great comments from it. With our new courtroom and courthouse expansion, includes a larger courtroom, and what I talked about, the Zoom meeting room that we're going to have. We're already looking into hiring a scheduling officer and a public defender to help our tribal people. And these are all good things. We would welcome a meeting, especially when Nick is in town next time, if we could get all these players together and get them with the tribal governing board. Nick has met with us once already and explained the jail assessment he did. And we all understand it was a real eye-opener, but we understood what the concerns are and that the majority of these inmates are tribal members. So I would welcome a meeting. I think the tribe is prepared to put more money towards this. And especially if we can get some coordination from Nick and Judge Jackal and this department as far as meeting some of our folks halfway with the Zoom meeting room and doing more things. Mr. Trepanier, our magistrate, will talk about seeing some of the lesser violations that tribal court. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, well, Tweed, I spoke to a lot of the points that I was going to bring up, but when our court, we're expanding, we're going to get a, 2,000-foot expansion on either side of the building. So we're going to be able to put a jury box in our courtroom. Our courtroom is going to expand, get bigger. We'll have a bar in the court. So we're working hard to just kind of be able to offer more services to people. And with the expansion itself comes, funding issues and just different things that, you don't think about when you're expanding. But I think we have a pretty good team that's been putting it together, that it's going to come together to a point where we can do the things that we need to do. And I don't know about, funds that you guys are talking about. I don't know a lot about that, so I can't really speak to that. But as far as capacity and, just about, availability and things of that nature, the LCO Tribal Court is going to be, more, it's going to be more prone to be able to handle these things. So Judge Smith, I know she does, I don't know if she spoke to it last meeting, but she does have a lot on her plate as far as, what we do as already in our civil cases. Judge Slender, or as Judge Slender probably remembers that. But adding more cases would have to be something that would definitely need to be, talked about and,
Okay.
about it. So,
Thank you for that. Mr. Howard,
No, I have nothing to say.
any other questions or comments from the committee? All right, so Mr. McCoy.
I was just gonna say, I would love to, the partnership with LCO has been wonderful. And I would love to see it be a 50-50 contribution. I would love to see LCO kick in some more money. Anytime you have a vested interest in something, in other words, if you're both funding 50%, you both have vested interest, I think you're willing to work harder together to make that work. So I would hope, please, that maybe you take it back, and if we can get some decent language and get some things worked out with Justice Point, that it can be a 50-50 funding proposition. I just feel that both would feel like they had equal footing in things and would work together on things.
All right, so here's what I'm gonna recommend, because we're getting close to the hour mark, is Tweet's already, well, Tweet has a couple of different hats that he wears. So when we have the meeting with Nick, we also have the budget information, the projected budget, as well as the budget that we have from last year.
Yes.
So that we can have an idea of what the dollar figure is gonna look like. And then when Nick is here, then Tweet and I, we can discuss about what those duties and responsibilities are gonna look like, what that dollar figure is gonna look like. And then from there, we can come back with a report that Tweet will write up and that we could share with everybody to find out where the corresponding areas that we can start looking at kind of merging up. Because the one thing I want to make sure that we are reminded is that this committee doesn't have a binding authority to tell, the judge or the DA how to handle the cases. We're supposed to have a recommendation to help alleviate some of the processes so that we can have a more efficient judicial system. So if the tribal court is in a position to start accepting some cases or starting to be involved with some of the adjudication of some of these processes, then the only way that that's going to happen is if the county clerks can meet. So if the Attorney General's office can meet with the DA, if the tribal judge can meet with the circuit judge, and so on and so forth. What we don't have is a compatible component with the public defender and with the corrections. But at least we'll have a framework of what that services are going to look like, because our first goal was to just try to do some kind of bond testing kind of component. So any questions on that?
I wonder if Nick, when he's up here, if he could meet with the tribal governing board either before or after our meeting.
That's it. So Nick can meet with whoever he wants to. I just want to make sure that
We appreciate that.
with that Tom, myself, you, and Nick have a chance to talk about the duties that's under the proposed contract, that we have a conversation about what the travel component is going to look like, and then so that you have a framework so that you and Nick can go and meet with the council, because I don't think it's out of the realm of discussion of what the allocation would be, because if we can get Nick's program in here to help alleviate the jail population, I think that's helpful as much for the tribe as it is for the county, and that could be money that could be well invested.
Yes.
So Tom, I'm gonna leave you with that to get that meeting with Nick set up and to make sure that Tweet and I can be there. And then once we have that meeting set up, give us a couple of days so that we can get it out. Anybody else in this committee who wants to be present can make that meeting.
Yeah, a couple of final thoughts here. Number one, when Diane provided information to Nick, she did coordinate information from Tammy. I mean, they did work closely together before Tammy left and before Diane left. Diane did incorporate the functions that Tammy was doing in her thoughts provided to Nick. Another thought too, this original MOU, which was written 3 years ago, that was written, I think there was 2 county board members and 1 tribal member at the time. And I think the funding came from 1 employee. So, the funding of $75,000 was a 2-to-1 split. Since that time, of course, we've added a lot of other things, the cost for the testing, other costs for programming, some of those things. So that's why we, are looking at a $200,000 budget, because there was some other activities that were included in that program. And as we look forward to next year in the TAD funding and the opportunity to do, expand our programs, that's really what we're trying to set ourselves up for. And with regard to, this committee not having the authority to make decisions, that's true, but this committee has got all the players in it that need to make recommendations for the decision makers. It's not going to come from the board. It's going to come from this committee This is the court function, this is the sheriff function, DA, all the players that have the knowledge to do what we need to do are sitting in this room. And so we need to take charge of that and focus of that and put things forward from this committee so they can go forward.
I'm like drop the mic moment, huh? We just adjourn on a good note then, or?
Yeah, that was very well said.
All right, well, is there any other comments or concerns? Can I get everybody while I'm here to look at your calendar and give me a recommendation for the next meeting in October?
A week of October 12th looks better for me than the first week.
So what about Wednesday, October 14th?
Noon?
Noon? Okay,
It's unlikely that I'd be able to make that. I have a trial that day.
you have someone else from your office that you could send over in your stead?
Probably, yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, but then that makes it difficult. Is that one of my trials?
You have at least 2 scheduled for that day, Josh.
Yeah, I'm in on that as well.
You guys have a problem with the criminal justice system. All right, so what about, is that all week then?
Yeah, I think it's. the last
Well, it's
half of the week.
scheduled for 2 days. Both trials are, both the one with Mr. Reed and the one with Mr. Sortedall, and I forget who the defense lawyer.
So is that Tuesday? Is that also, is that the other day of that week?
The 13th?
No, Tuesday is the 12th. So, oh no, I'm sorry, you already used it.
So there's a trial on the 14th and 15th, or the 15th and 14th?
14th, 15th.
So if we shoot for Tuesday, October 13th at noon?
Off the top of my head, it sounds all right.
More chance than the 14th.
Mr. Reed,
That should work.
Mr. Schley,
Yep, that works for me.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Sheriff,
Yes.
Lieutenant, good. Mr. Schuman,
Good.
Mr. Hahn.
Yes.
That's it. All right, we're set for Tuesday, October 13th at noon. We'll be here in the assembly room. Hearing nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. I want to thank everyone for the participation.